Don't you see that the whole aim of newspeak is to narrow the range of thought? In the end, we shall make thought crime literally impossible because there will be no words in which to express it. Every concept that can ever be needed will be expressed by exactly one word, with its meaning rigidly defined and all its subsidiary meanings rubbed out and forgotten. Even now, of course, there's no reason or excuse for committing thought crime. It's merely a question of self-discipline, reality control. But in the end, there won't be any need even for that.
1984, George Orwell. Way back in December of 2016, I thought I would lend my voice to the resistance of the first presidency of the current holder of that office by focusing on the way in which he and his acolytes used language to reap and store followers for support for his mission. I wanted to share the idea that what was being said was less a question of the actual content than it was the way in which it was being said that was being used. This essay was one of the first I wrote on the subject. It was a kind of introduction. There were other essays. I compared TrumpTalk to the discourse of Abraham Lincoln. I delved into the speech around the infamous locker room talk of the Access Hollywood tape. I went after Kellyanne Conway and Steve Bannon. I ripped the inauguration speech to shreds. The theme didn't attract much attention. Others tried to talk about this discourse as well, but everyone was all caught up in the content, which was mainly intentional falsehood, rather than how those falsehoods were being sown, cultivated, harvested, and processed into consumer manipulation products. I think that's a pity. I think a lot of harm could have been avoided if people were more in tune with how the messaging was done versus the simplistic, meaningless, actually truly horrible message being spit at us. I do talk about the message, though, simply in the context of the message not necessarily being the same as the messenger. And it is true that there are messages in much of TrumpTalk. However, because I consider those messages to be the most convenient and most historically repeated and effective for these ends, I really am more focused on the means. A message from these people about immigration doesn't have anything to do with immigration. Their message about drug trafficking has nothing to do with the movement of fentanyl across borders. That content is just filling in the space that is dominated by the way in which those messages are being communicated, the Trump talk of linguistic control and domination. This is a thing. Mr. Orwell saw it and described it. We've paid a bit of lip service to it since World War II, but I still think it's being pushed aside by the scandal caused by the content. Anyway, here's that essay from 2016. Remember, it's dated. There will be reference to stuff from way back then, when we were unaware of just how much damage one man could do to our reality. And yet, I think this is one of the most evergreen essays I've written about this. Enjoy.
TrumpTalk, finding the meaning behind and in front of the words.
This will be the language we will both hear and have to correctly interpret during the next 4 years. Don't be fooled by the title. It will not only be about the language of Donald J. Trump, but also the language used by those supporting and opposing him. This language will come to most of us in a second-hand fashion. Few will actually hear the words directly from the speaker's mouth. We will be exposed to this language through media, so-called social networks, maybe as hearsay from friends who have read or heard it. In all of these cases, the speech will somehow be filtered. Those filters may be of many different types. Editing to remove the words from context. Technical limitations imposed by the platform used, tone of voice in reaction to the words themselves because of the personal point of view of the one sharing the language. In no case will the language be pure and easily interpreted.
Who is using TrumpTalk?
The objective here is to try to make sense out of the words being delivered to us. The people who use this language, from Mr. Trump at the head through the most important of his advisors in cabinet to the lowliest pulp content writer and man-on-the-street supporter or opposer, they are simply the users. Their motivations for using this language should be noted. They will contribute to the context in which the language will need to be understood.
Where is Trump talk being used?
Besides the people and their motivations for repeating or using Trump talk, we will need to take note of where they are when using this language. That where may be a physical geographical place on our planet, the White House press room, on Air Force One, in a television studio interview, on a talk show, during a street protest march. Other wheres will be virtual. Twitter, Facebook, so-called fake news platforms, more serious news platforms, videos uploaded to YouTube. That place must be taken into consideration as well.
Universe of discourse. Who, why, and where?
Taking into consideration the people, their motivations, and the place, we have three parts of a universe of discourse. We have three ways to approach the understanding of the language. If we take away any of the three, we can easily fall into misinterpretation of the words. Such misinterpretations will lead to distraction, frustration, anger, none of which can lead us to responsible action. It is that responsible action that we will need to consider taking. Allowing Trump talk to determine what we think, what we believe in, how we act, can become a dangerous route. Trump talk is evasive. It doesn't get to the point. It uses slogans and cliches. It doesn't tell us what the user is thinking, but rather what the user has been convinced to believe is true. Through this closer look at Trump talk, we can strip away the gauze and either expose the total vacuity of the message or reveal the true message being conveyed despite the doublespeak. Trump talk is the real-world version of Orwell's Newspeak.
Newspeak was designed not to extend, but to diminish the range of thought, and this purpose was indirectly assisted by cutting the choice of words down to a minimum.
George Orwell again. Newspeak was a reduced means of communication meant to turn the tables on how language really works as a representation of thought. Newspeak meant to limit thought by limiting the language available for expressing thought. Trump talk, in its way, sometimes does the same, which can very well lead to a society, and not only American, it is contagious, that no longer thinks or understands. Trump talk also leads to confusion. It can be so many words and sentences strung together that seem to have meaning, but which actually lack any direction or represent any thought process. When used in this way, Trump talk is not meant to limit thought, but rather to limit understanding, comprehension. A society that no longer thinks can no longer have a say in the individual life. Choice is gleefully handed over to repetition. Behavior is controlled by the slogan. When there is no understanding, belief is created by the few so that the many sit down and shut up. This is why Trump talk must be observed, analyzed, and understood.
First the message, then the messenger.
This is not about Donald Trump. Little needs to be said of his character, his thoughts, his actions. Nor will it be about the people who surround him, their characters, thoughts, or beliefs. You will either be for or against these people, maybe sometimes both. We only know that these people exist because they have risen to prominent positions in society. They will be heard daily. Their words must be understood. Who they are should become secondary, as the language itself has already taken control of their thoughts. We mustn't allow it to take control of our thoughts. Avoid attacking the messenger. He or she may have little control over his or her message. Look at the message itself. Understand the language used and, for now, ignore the user. It doesn't matter who is using that language at this point. Once the message has been understood, action towards the situation can be taken, sometimes involving the messenger, oftentimes involving the institution that has given the messenger his or her power to try to convince us. In direct English, for those of you who are already preparing to attack, we are not attacking Mr. Trump and his. We are not going to call out names or use terms like racist or misogynist or fascist when speaking about the people. Those terms, those evaluations and interpretations will be limited to the ideas, the message. And I'd add now in 2025, the messaging. In this discussion, we must be aware that this language has been used in the past with unpleasant consequences. The messengers who used it in the past are now dead, no longer able to control us and our behavior. The present-day messengers will pass into history as well. It is our job, our responsibility to make sure that they do not repeat the actions that caused so much damage in the past. My contribution is what I can do. Expose their language. Your contribution must be within your talents, capacities, and willingness to act. Okay, back in 2025, it was hard not to edit out the whole message, not messenger part there at the end. It's really not part of this essay, which tried to focus on the way in which the message was being delivered, the who, where, why of a universe of discourse being used towards evil ends. I know why I included it, though. I simply don't see how saying awful things about the people involved will lend itself to the changes necessary today. Yes, I have a personal opinion about the current president, and were it of any use, I would share it here. But no matter the descriptive adjectives or insults I sling in his general direction, they will have no impact on what one of the real problems is. And that problem is not what I think of that man. The problem I am highlighting is how that man and others who share his agenda are openly manipulating us through such a volatile and cheap tool as the language we use to try to understand one another. To use language to divide, to inflame, to breed hate and contempt, that's a brash misuse of language. Language is the only way we can come to understand what our fellows are brooding about, what thoughts run through their minds. Turning the tables, using language to control those thoughts instead of allowing language to reveal those thoughts, has been shown to be a nasty road towards what we're both living now and what we fear we will be living promptly. Yeah, I'll talk about that on the other side as well. Soon. Watch for it. Remember to
listen, like, subscribe, and share.
And links are where links are supposed to be. Cheers.
You're listening to Radio Revel.